Just going to shoot a short video here talking about ways to group amounts on the statements, and we're going to look at the expenses here. Right now I have one group with a total for expenses in the current prior year. So we're going to do this two ways. One is to use subheadings and subtotals, and the second way is to use schedules, and we can even combine those schedules onto one page. So let's start with just showing everything on the main income statement. So from the expense area, we're going to have two groups here. We'll have selling and administrative expenses. I'm not going to worry about which I put into either, just so you get the idea of how these are added. So from the expense title here, I'm going to right click on here, and I'm going to click on Insert Subheading, and we'll put that in. So we're just going to add that as selling. And then I would decide what I want under that and move down to the line, for example, under bank charges here, right click, and we're going to insert a subtotal at that point. And then below the subtotal, I'm going to right click and insert another subheading, and we'll call this one administration. Okay, and then we'll move to the bottom of the expenses, so just before we hit the total here, and we'll drop in one more subtotal right there. So let's make sure we're at the bottom. So right after vehicle. So right click and insert a subtotal right there. Okay, now just clear the flags and we'll do a print preview here. So you can see that I was able to put together two different groups here by putting in a subheading and then a subtotal. So we organized it. One more thing with this is that if you right click on the subheading, you have some options in terms of formatting. So italics, bold, bold underline, for example, or underline any of these options. So I'm just going to add an underline on those, and we'll just do a print preview one more time. Okay, so there's one way that we could organize into groups within a main area of expenses. Now we're going to do this again, except we're going to use schedules to do this. So I'm just going to set this back up again. Okay, so I just exited that and reset the income statement, so we can see we've just got the one section back in here again. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create a couple of schedules which we can put on one page, and then I'm going to bring those schedules back onto the main income statement. Okay, so we're going to move up to the statement menu up at the top of the statements, and we're going to click on the Insert Schedule from Resource Center, and let's just bring in a couple of schedules here. Okay. Now I have the 2-year statements loaded here, so I'm going to use, in this case, I'm going to use a 2-year income statement type schedule. So we're going to bring those two in. So that's just putting in a placeholder here. We could sort these to different locations later, but I'm just going to click on the first one here. And let's set each of these to be a 1 or 2 year income statement type schedule. Okay, so let's go. There's the first one. We'll get the second one here. And in each of these, we're going to link these to operations, which just means that whatever area we fill in on this schedule, it's going to go on the same area on the income statement. So if I use the expense area, that will be a line on the expenses within the main income statement. So in this first one here, I'm just going to move down, and we're going to start putting in the numbers that we want here, and then we'll do some formatting afterwards. So I'm just going to click on the drop down and just start putting in some of those maps. And what I'll do is I will continue once I have those maps in on those schedules. Okay, so now what I have is two schedules where I've basically taken all the expense maps and organized it between Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. And if we look now at the expenses on the income statement, we can see that it includes all the items that we had previously, and now we have Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. So we actually have double the expenses in here right now. So in order to correct that, what I'm going to do is go up into the income statement and put myself in the expense area. I'm going to right click here and choose balances and choose schedules only. And that will now exclude anything that is not in a schedule. You can actually see here that my rounding is now back in within $1, so I know I have all my expenses shown on those schedules. So next thing I'm going to do here is let's give each schedule a title. So I'm going to call this selling expenses. Okay. And I'm going to call the other one administrative expenses. All right, good. So if we look again now at the income statement, we have 2 lines in there in the expense area for selling and administration, and it's coming from the 2 schedules. So the last thing I'd like to do is to be able to combine these schedules into one page. So what I'm going to be doing is attaching the admin schedule to the selling expense schedule. So let me go down to that administrative expense schedule. So the first thing we're going to do here is take the page break off of the administrative expenses. So we're going to do that, take that off. And if we did a print preview, this is where we're at. So now these are both on the same page. Notice as well that we really don't need this subheading here because this is selling and this is administration. We could do a number of things here, and perhaps what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide all of this. So on this administrative one, we're going to hide the headings. Now that I've turned this page break off, you see this button here, so we'll take the headings off, and that gives us this. So we'll print preview again. Okay. Now what I might want to do is just call this expenses and have this as selling and this as administration, and actually skip this line entirely. So here's how we're going to do that. We'll move up to the top. We're just going to call this expenses. All right, so let's change this heading here to selling expenses. We might even have a heading there for that. We do. So we'll use that. We'll go down to the second one. So this is our other schedule which we attached. And we're going to take this out. Now I'm left with this schedule number, but we can actually deal with that as well. If we go back to the top here and under the statement menu, you see it says schedule 2 now. I'm just going to take that off as well. Okay, so let's see what we have now. Actually, the only thing we have left to do is just drop this as administrative expenses. Let's do that. Okay, let's see what we have here. How about that? I'm using the section headings here for selling expenses and administrative expenses. I've hidden the headers here, and I've turned off the schedule numbers. On the main income statement, I've got selling and administrative expenses, so it's picking up those numbers in there. I did have to type these descriptions in because I'm not going to use the main schedule headings, but you're able to do that right on the statement itself. The only other thing I'd like to do is I'm just going to move that schedule right behind the main income statement. So I'm going to click here on the sort button and just move my expenses up. So let me just move those up. Okay, and let's go down to our income statement. So there you go. So on our income statement, we could have those scheduled numbers if we wanted them, but I turned them off. I've just typed in the descriptions that I want into these fields rather than use the schedule titles. So let's do a print preview. So we have our 2 amounts coming into the expenses here, and we have our schedule, which I've just pushed behind the main income statement with those 2 areas. So if we wanted more of these, we could bring in more schedules, turn off the schedule number if we wanted, combine them by turning off the page number at the top of each schedule. And we saw that we could hide the schedule title at the top as well. And we can have as many of these groupings as we like. I hope this helps.